Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to News Dose. And to round out the week, we got another update for the Switch successor as Nintendo themselves gave us another key detail, which includes a partnership with Microsoft, aka Xbox. Now, they have partnered together in the past, but that relationship is about ready to get even stronger once we head into the Switch 2, and I'm going to explain why today. Now, PlayStation also gave us some welcome information, especially after this year where they faced a lot of scrutiny for their controversial shift in strategy. Let's just go get right into things, though, starting off with Overwatch. Years ago, when Overwatch first launched, and I believe it was 2016, I became obsessed with this game, much like a lot of the game community was at that time. It was a fresh new idea with just amazing characters, it had a great art design, and it really was just a ton of fun to play. I even got my now wife playing it. She actually still plays it to this day. Now, she's not much of a gamer, but she loves Overwatch. The only problem is, I, as well as many other people, have grown a little bit sour towards the Overwatch sequel. With some of the changes that they made, it just doesn't really have the same magic that it used to, or at least in my opinion. Now, you might feel differently. You might prefer the sequel, and hey, that's perfectly fine if you do. But for anybody like myself, there is speculation that Blizzard is currently teasing an Overwatch Classic mode. Yeah, you can see here posted up on Resetera, somebody summarized the situation, and they said, yeah, something is going on. Marketing job post about a new feature, nostalgia tweets, Instagram deleted post with quote-unquote, what year is it, in the bio. Those goggles are Overwatch 1 Tracer. So, I mean, I hope this turns out to be true. Blizzard does have some kind of new trailer set for November 11th, which means we might not have to wait all that long to find out for ourselves. But I already told my wife what's up, and yeah, she seems pretty excited about the possibility. And hopefully some of you are as well, assuming that this actually turns out to be what we want it to be. Oh, and speaking of multiplayer games, Call of Duty Black Ops released last month, and I know a lot of people are currently enjoying that. You know, they launched with record-breaking numbers, in part thanks to the Game Pass inclusion. But of course, you know, there's still a lot of people waiting for the eventual Warzone integration. Well, about that, they just announced the Black Ops 6 Warzone release date will be set for November 14th. So, I mean, it's actually next week, which is pretty cool to see. And you can see here where they said, full Black Ops 6 integration. Season 1 brings the Pick 3 perk system, weapons, wildcards, omni movement, global weapon builds, and much more as Black Ops 6 fully integrates with Call of Duty Warzone. Plus, keep an eye out for the rare specialist perk package, granting all perks plus irradiated and shrouded on pickup. So, I mean, if you're a Warzone fan, which I know there's a lot of you all out there, this is really good news. Now, admittedly, I've never really gotten into the Battle Royale phenomenon. I do prefer the more classic arena multiplayer stuff, but, you know, without a doubt, Warzone is incredibly popular, and for those that do enjoy it, I mean, I hope it turns out to be as good as Black Ops 6, because it really seems like this is one of the better Call of Duty games that we've gotten in a very, very long time. Let's just kind of hope that that trend will continue onward. Okay, now let's go talk about Nintendo. We actually have a few different topics to go over for them, and we might as well just go ahead and start off with, I'd say, the more ridiculous news. I mean, okay, so as a game company, I love Nintendo and the games that they make. They've really made some of my favorite games ever made, and I've gone on the record multiple times that, in my opinion, I think the Switch in its library is among the all-time greats. But for as many good things that I can say about Nintendo as a game developer, I mean, I can also say as a business, they can really just be flat out ridiculous at times. And today, I think is one of those times. If you remember right, earlier this year, Palworld launched to a ton of fanfare. It was a big surprise hit that reached more than 25 million people. I mean, that's just crazy to think about. But that wasn't without its controversy. You know, they were immediately criticized for their similar Pokemon-esque designs, and many people accused them of just flat-out plagiarizing several Pokemon characters. And if you look at some of the designs compared to their Pokemon counterpart, I mean, yeah, you know, it's fairly easy to see why there is some suspicion, and eventually this caught the attention of Nintendo and the Pokemon Company. They put out a statement earlier this year that they would look into it, and eventually they did, in fact, file a lawsuit. At the time of that filing, though, we didn't really have much information about what they were actually accusing Pocket Pair of. We just knew that it was about patents rather than a copyright infringement, which was rather interesting because we were all kind of expecting it to be a copyright claim, but that really wasn't the case. But we just got some more details today, and I have to say that this was a little bit more ridiculous than what I thought it was going to be. So what Nintendo decided to do is that they're accusing Palworld of infringing on patents that includes generic gameplay mechanics. Now, these mechanics include things like throwing an object at a monster to capture them, and riding on top of a monster, which is something that Pokemon has done in the past as well. Technically, these are patents that Nintendo filed, but this is where I have to kind of point out, I think this is a rather dangerous precedent to set for the game industry. I mean, if you really think about it, almost every single game emulates another game in some shape or form. So the idea that you can come out and patent a gameplay mechanic, especially ones that are relatively trivial, if Nintendo were to win something like this could be detrimental to game design if companies can completely and legally control these gameplay mechanics. And what's more here is that Palworld is not the first game to have mechanics similar to these. I mean, the monster capturing genre has been around for a very long time, even longer than the Pokemon franchise, to be quite honest. And I can easily point to other games like Coromon as one such example that plays a lot more similar to Pokemon than what Palworld does. So these type of mechanics are a staple for this genre. So I don't really see how Nintendo can enforce something like this when it's been happening well before they ever filed a patent in the first place. I mean, if they wanted to go after Palworld's character design, then okay, fair enough. Let's see if they can actually prove that there was some kind of copyright infringement. But for generic gameplay patents like this, I mean, I think this just kind of comes off as potentially dangerous for the game industry. It just sets a really poor precedent. At the end of the day, though, what I think Nintendo is trying to do is that they're attempting to make an example out of Pocket Pair. I don't know if they necessarily expect to win. Nintendo and the Pokemon Company, they have a lot of money that they can just throw around. But what I think they're trying to do is they're trying to send a message to future competition. They're trying to scare them off, and it's almost like they're trying to tell them, if you fly too close to the sun, we will act. So, I mean, we'll kind of see how all this plays out. Pocket Pair seems to be prepared for this, and they're not backing down as of this time. Of course, they made a lot of money off of Palworld, but definitely let me know what you all think about this case and whether you think Nintendo is in the right or in the wrong. Now, as for this other Nintendo-related topic, and this is actually much more exciting and on the fence of good news, this is about the soon-to-be Switch successor. Nintendo still hasn't revealed the console itself or any of its games, but this past week, they've become much more open with new bits of information. This includes backwards compatibility and Switch Online. They confirmed the Switch successor will include both of those. I know a lot of people are very happy about the backwards compatibility, as am I. And now, they've also revealed a strategy to strengthen third-party relationships. I mean, for as good as Nintendo is as a first-party developer, I mean, they are among the best. But they've never really been as well known on the third-party side of things. Most fans typically buy Nintendo consoles for Nintendo games specifically. But this is something that Nintendo was trying to change with the Switch successor. They just revealed that they're working hard behind the scenes to get third-party companies on board for the Switch successor, and you can see here that they've already gotten a lot of partners. This includes Atlas, which I think is a very interesting one. I think there's a very good chance that we could actually end up getting both Persona 3 Reload and ReFantazio within the first year for the Switch successor. Both of those games feels like they could be perfect fits on a Nintendo handheld console. Then Bandai Namco is on here as well. There's Capcom, maybe some Resident Evil games. The Switch successor is allegedly similar to the PlayStation 4 in terms of its specs, but with NVIDIA DLSS. So theoretically, it should be more than capable of some of the newer Resident Evil games. So that would be pretty cool to see. EA is on here as well, which is also an interesting one. They haven't exactly always had a great relationship with Nintendo. Then there's also From Software on this list, which is very interesting. There is a chance that we could see Armored Core 6 and maybe even Elden Ring on the Switch successor. Those games do have PS4 versions, so the Switch 2 should be more than capable of running those games. But I think one of the most interesting names that pops out on this infographic is Microsoft. You don't really typically think of them as a third-party company, but technically they are, especially with the acquisition of Activision. And I think that's why this is pretty easy to explain. I mean, obviously, there's going to be some speculation that they will port games like Hi-Fi Rush and Sea of Thieves, similar to what they did with PlayStation. I actually think that those are highly likely as well. I think it makes sense to do that. But even without that speculation, we know for a 100% fact that Microsoft has every intention to get new Call of Duty games on Nintendo console for the first time in over a decade. And honestly, I think that's pretty incredible to think about. I mean, if you think about it, Call of Duty Black Ops 6 launched with a record-breaking number of players, in large part because of its inclusion to Game Pass. But there's also a very good chance that they will break that record once again next year with the addition of Nintendo. A new Call of Duty on Nintendo will be a monumental moment in gaming, and I think with what's expected from the Switch successor and its specs, it's not going to be like the past where the Nintendo version just feels inferior in every possible way. I mean, sure, the Switch successor is not going to be as powerful as the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X on a spec level, but it should still be able to hold its own, especially if it truly does have DLSS. And, just having that portable option, that could be enticing for a lot of people to be able to play Call of Duty on a dedicated handheld console like the Nintendo Switch 2. I mean, to me, that sounds like pretty exciting stuff. But like I said before, Microsoft could actually be a big supporter for the Switch in its first year. Hi-Fi Rush, Sea of Thieves, and Call of Duty, that would be a pretty good lineup from them. Speaking of their relationship, though, I mean, I'm just going to kind of throw this out there. What I think they should do, I don't know if they'll ever actually do this, but what I think they should do is that Xbox should go out and make a new Banjo-Kazooie game and launch it simultaneously across Nintendo and Xbox at the same time. I mean, obviously, Xbox seems to be open to the idea of multi-platform games on a game-by-game basis, and I think Banjo-Kazooie would be a perfect fit for that strategy. I think Nintendo and Xbox fans would eat a new Banjo-Kazooie game up. So, I mean, come on. If Nintendo really wants to strengthen their partnership with Microsoft, maybe go talk to them about a new Banjo-Kazooie game. Let's make this happen. Okay, now, one last thing before we go. Sony also gave us an update about their future strategy, and I absolutely love this, and I think a lot of you will as well. Obviously, this has been a strange year for the PlayStation brand. Now, I think they've held their own in a lot of ways with their third-party partnerships, but in terms of their first-party lineup specifically, it's been a very different year for them. They didn't really have that flagship single-player game that we're used to seeing from them. They had a couple of live service titles like Helldivers 2 and Concord, which, Concord completely failed. And then they also had Astrobot, which, that was an amazing game. I fully expect that to be a Game of the Year candidate. But they were missing that big blockbuster title that PlayStation fans have come to expect from them. Well, Sony has now vowed to fix that problem going forward. In their latest financial report, they said, starting with Ghost of Yotei, which is a sequel to the smash hit Ghost of Tsushima, we plan to continue releasing major single-player game titles every year from next fiscal year onward. So, I mean, there you go. They're getting back to their bread and butter, those single-player blockbuster games. I think in a lot of ways they kind of stifled themselves this generation with their heavy focus on live service titles. I mean, I've said it 100 times, and I'll just kind of say it again here, but they should have never prioritized live service to the extent that it would receive the majority of their budget like they were trying to do. Now, that was a Jim Ryan thing. I know Herman Holst is probably in on it as well. I don't know. But I think they should still support live service games, but I don't think they should be their number one priority like we've seen here recently, because that's not what their long-term fans are necessarily asking for. What I'd personally like to see from Sony is just a good, healthy balance of big AAA blockbuster titles, then your smaller, more creative AA games like Astro. Do not forget about these games. I mean, we want to see those as well. And then have your occasional live service titles peppered in as well. The thing that I just don't want to see them do is put all of their eggs into one basket. Having too many AAA blockbusters, that could come back and bite them. If you have too many live service titles, again, that could come back to bite them. But if they can learn to balance out AA, AAA, and live service, I think they could really just fire on all cylinders. Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode. I hope you all go out and enjoy your weekend. And until next time, make sure to subscribe and peace out.